Hey, thank you so much for making the time to be here. My name is Joe Hickel, and we are joined here by an administrator, the school psychologist, a few of your students' teachers, as well as their academic counselor. Um, the purpose of our meeting today is for an annual review for JP's IEP. Um, we will go over the placement and special education services that JP will receive for the next year, as well as discuss the results and recommendations based on some assessments that we've been working through with JP. And we will essentially come up with a plan to best support JP and give him the resources that he needs to succeed. Just an update on his academic performance. He is currently receiving B in photography, C's in inclusion science, sheltered English 11, sheltered history, and his ESOL class. He has a D in inclusion geometry, which he takes with me, and he has an F in creative writing. JP is struggling the most in geometry and creative writing. Lately, he has been motivated to bump his grades up by the receiving of Mike and Ike's, his favorite candy. That has been a good motivator for him to um, start to take his grades a little more seriously at this point in the semester. He is in the general education setting all day and is receiving inclusion support in geometry and in science. And he is also receiving sheltered support through the ELL program for history and for English. So let's go over some results from the assessments that I took him through. So I started with a few informal assessments. The first one being a phonemic skills assessment. And I just shared my screen here. Um, so I essentially had lists of words that followed different rules and had him read those words off, just to determine if there were any phonemic gaps that JP had. And so the results that I came up with, so these are the percent of words that he read and decoded correctly as he read from the list for each category. And so we see that he did really well in CVC words, um, in variant vowels and diphthongs. Um, the area that he struggled the most in was multisyllabic words, which he correctly read a little over 40% of the time. And so that is an area that we are going to focus on and just filling in those gaps to help him read more confidently. Another informal test that I gave him was um, it was a math assessment to um, it was a math assessment to kind of boil down where JP fell at grade level equivalent wise. And so it had a few questions for each grade level based on the standards that they go through. And he worked until he couldn't figure it out. And he attempted through the fifth grade level, um, but really around the third to fourth grade level is where he started to miss more problems and struggle a little bit more. So this is just the breakdown in the questions correct per grade level. And so, yeah, really around third to fourth grade is where he fell at in terms of grade level equivalent from this informal assessment, as well as an informal assessment that deals with social emotional skills. And the findings from this, so this was taken during a week of class. How many times did he arrive late, leave early, refuse to complete tasks, show disrespect? And the findings from this were that JP is very respectful for other people. Um, a couple of areas that he struggled in is tardiness, absences, arriving late to class is something that he struggles in about 3 times a week. And then also refusing to complete tasks is something that I have found. It's typically not verbally or aggressively, but I'm just kind of passively refusing um, to accomplish the assignment or even to engage in the assignment. Um, so the norm reference test that I chose was the MAP test, and we give that MAP test to all of our students, and that is something that students across the country um, participate in. And on that test, it kind of starts you off at a certain level of question, and if you get the question right, it'll gradually get more difficult. If you get it wrong, it will kind of take it back down and give you an easier one, trying to kind of see where your student fits into the stack of people that take the test. And so the national average, um, so they scored it with the RIT score, and the national average was about 231. And and JP scored at 198. And it gives even further subcategory scores to where it breaks down different math skills and topics and shows which ones JP struggles with the most. And that happened to be in geometry, was JP's biggest area of lack or area of need. And that is displayed here in this chart. Um, yeah, this is his geometry score of 192, and his highest was his operations and algebraic thinking. That was the highest one that he scored in. And lastly, the curriculum-based measurement assessment. Um, so I gave JP 2 baseline tests, and they were a page of about 49 multiplication and division mixed problems with the digits 1 through 12. And these are skills that typically around the 3rd grade, students start to memorize those multiplication and division problems and are able to work through those really fast and confidently. And I noticed that JP in class, when it come to some bigger and more complex problems, was still kind of struggling with some of the uh, multiplication and division um, that most students are able to work through really confidently and quickly. And so I gave him 2 minutes to get as many problems done as he could in that 2 minutes. And then I counted the amount of digits correct that he scored in that 2 minutes and gave a per minute score. So his baseline, he averaged, um, so here in this chart, his baseline, he averaged about 22 in his baseline. And so I calculated an AIM score for him to get to in 5 weeks. And we took that assessment on each Thursday for 5 weeks. And I mapped out his growth. And that is in blue here are his scores, and orange is the AIM line. And so he actually was above the aim line the whole time. And so um, yeah, after the baseline, I introduced some interventions with him. And those interventions were flashcards to work through them quickly and get repetitions, and um, also had the intervention of um, going one-on-one with him through different ways to quickly work through those and solve those. And he did well with methods that you could work with your hands and kind of use tiles or use money to multiply and divide, just things like that, where you can work with your hands. Uh, yeah, and this is just the breakdown. So he struggled more with division, which is in the orange. And so that's what we focused on a little bit more. So these assessments were used to support the conclusion that JP qualifies for special education services through the identified learning disability. One assessment alone does not have the ability to determine his eligibility, but a variety of assessments that look into his academic skills, social emotional skills, cognitive abilities, and other areas do have the power to do that. I used those specific informal assessments because they gave baseline data for where he's at mathematically, revealed gaps in his phonemic skills in order to grow in confidence in reading, and to get a picture of what JP was like socially and emotionally inside the classroom around his peers. I used the specific norm referenced assessment because it compared JP's results to those of his peers. The MAP test gave a snapshot of JP's math skills compared nationally and also highlighted areas that he struggled in more than his grade age peers. Um, I used the specific CBM assessment because I could tell that JP struggled with his confidence in some of the work that we were doing in class because he had some gaps in the foundational skills of multiplication and division with numbers 1 through 12. Through relationship with JP, as well as supported from the results of the assessments given to JP, some strengths that I see in him is that he is very relational, thoughtful, builds really good relationships with his peers and with staff members. He is really good at learning and mastering material with hands-on learning and one-on-one learning. He is motivated and puts in effort to raise his grades, and also has some strength in multiplication skills. Some weaknesses that have been identified for JP are reading and decoding multisyllabic words, which we found in the phonemic test. He can get very distracted easily and gives up when he doesn't understand. Um, and also a weakness just in some foundational math skills like division that students his age have had memorized for a while. So I have two long-term goals for JP. The first is by the end of the IEP period, so by the end of the year, when given a list of 40 multisyllabic words containing closed, open, consonant vowel E and vowel team syllable types, JP will be able to decode 36 out of 40 words correctly as measured by his teacher. In a short-term goal for that, or a baseline, is that when given a list of 40 multisyllabic words, by the end of the semester, JP will be able to decode 30 out of 40 words correctly. The second long-term goal is that by the end of the IEP period, when given a worksheet of 49 multiplication and division problems with numbers 1 through 12 in a time limit of 2 minutes, JP will demonstrate mastery in multiplication and division by scoring 50 digits correct per minute as measured by a teacher record. And the short-term goal that I have with that for a baseline is that by the end of the semester, um, JP will, um, yeah, when given 49 multiplication and division questions with numbers 1 through 12, he will be able to correctly answer 45 digits correctly per minute as measured by teacher record. Um, so those are his goals for math and reading that I have for him, just to kind of further develop some of those foundational skills and hopefully provide confidence in his ability to read out loud in front of peers, and also his confidence in answering math problems and working through multi-step problems. Um, so that was a lot of information. Um, just have a couple more things, and then I want to open it up to you to ask questions. Um, so the role that I envision you guys playing as parents is an active participant in the process by being an open and curious member of the team, asking questions, understanding and saying what their child needs, and advocating, helping advocate, and helping your student advocate for themselves for appropriate goals and services. So I hope to have two-way communication. Um, as his case manager, you are able to check in with me, uh, update me if something's going on at home, or if you have a question about some of his classes or his performance. Um, I want to, yeah, just open up two-way conversation with that as I aim to update you with things on our end here at school. And yeah, just be consistent with consequences and rewards, both here at school and at home. So if there's something you're doing at home, I would want to reinforce that here at school, and vice versa. Um, so the lessons that I have that I'm going to be working with and teaching JP um, from this point to accomplish his goals, I will be teaching him how to quickly read and decode multisyllabic words within a passage. Um, I'll be um, helping him memorize and quickly perform division and multiplication problems, as well as um, working with customary and metric units of length because I know of JP's desire to go into mechanics um, or barber school, and working with measurements and lengths is something that JP will need in those fields. And so those are my the three lessons that I'll be working with your student on. So I just wanted to open it up if you guys have questions for me or ideas. Well, all right. Thank you so much for meeting. We'll be in contact. Yeah, I really look forward to working with you and um, just helping JP as much as we can to succeed and get to where he wants to go. Thank you. Have a great night.